Chapter 9. With the benefit of hindsight, it is easy for me to look back on the events that transpired on Heathmoor in that time and admonish the sheer ignorance and ineptitude with which the citizens were confronting the greenskins. However, at the time most had not even begun to understand the magnitude of the threat they were facing. Certainly they could respect the far-reaching power of the greenskin hordes, but they had not yet grasped the ultimate danger of orcish invasions, the barbarity and complete battle craze that comes along with it. Orcish mentality is easy to understand. Theirs is a group mentality that revolves around violence, brutish barbarism, and destroying everything in their path. In orcish society, might makes right. The strong quite literally feed on the weak, and in the case of Gretchen, this is far more literal than my readers are probably aware of. And the orcs perceive any degree of weakness as worthy of death. Orcs are impatient, sometimes killing each other if their kin aren't working or fighting fast enough for their liking. Indeed, there's documented evidence to suggest that many orc wogs end early only because the orcs in the back get tired of waiting and start turning on each other so that they can get to the front lines. To understand the orcs, you must give your mind and body totally to the act of war. Even in a land as enveloped as war as Heathmoor, most do not quite grasp this barbarous concept. Well, perhaps a few did, but I get ahead of myself. At this point in the log, it's important for our readers to realize that this event was unprecedented. The factions that make up the warring lands of Heathmoor rarely ever met in conjunction with each other. And yet, in the shadow of the Blue Citadel, the Noble Legion, the Vikings of Raffenfell, the Samurai of Amaku, and even an unmentioned group thus far called the Blue Dragon Corps, all were in attendance. Now, I've not mentioned this particular group as of yet, as they had not yet had contact or awareness of the Greenskins at this point, waging a skirmish in the northernmost part of Heathmoor and Valkenheim up until this point. Qinglong, the leader of this group, had heard rumors of the three factions meeting, as well as a strange green menace. A very inquisitive man, I believe he came to the meeting purely out of curiosity, and what he would learn there would more than shock him, as I'm sure you'll understand. This log that follows was written from his perspective, but the reason I think it's so important to understand this is the fact that never before had these factions met in such a manner, and I hope it helps you understand, my dear reader, that Heathmoor was well and truly in danger. And the factions were only now beginning to realize this. From the Diary of a Weary Dragon, the Annals and Logs of the Blue Dragon Corps.
I have no patience for fools, as many who know me can attest. It is why I abandoned my place in Wulin to forge ahead with my warband. It is why I no longer call myself a Zhongjun, though many of my company still treat me as such.
1. A Zhongjun. This word can roughly be translated to mean general or high military leader. However, it may be easier for my readers to compare the Zhongjun to something akin to a regimental commander, a colonel, if you will. Zhongjuns are effective fighters in their own right, but most tend not to involve themselves directly on the front lines. Qinglong was certainly a man of action himself, which is possibly why he no longer gives himself that title.
When I consider the rumors I'd heard about green-skinned demons and monsters roaming the land, I considered it foolishness. And yet, to have 3 detachments from the 3 warring factions to meet at once to discuss these demons, I couldn't simply ignore it. At first, I had anticipated their hesitance to involve me in their discussions. However, I would find that they were quite welcoming indeed. I approached the citadel with Baoshin and Chailin, 2 of my most trusted warriors. I dare not bring any of the others. Too many warriors in one place would look more like an attack or aggressive action than a chance for deliberation. To my surprise, though, a night warden came out to meet us. He called himself William and spoke to me not as enemy, but like a man relieved at my coming. Never had a knight greeted me in this manner. Baoshin seemed more than at ease, though Chailin, as ever, appeared cautious.
"It is a trap, sir," she whispered to me as we were welcomed in. "I do not trust this knight."
"What reason has he to be deceitful?" Baoshin reasoned. "If he meant us harm, then he could have had archers ready to fire down on us as we approached."
"How should I know the intentions of a snake?"
Shaolin hissed back at the monk. "Both of you patience," I ordered firmly. Bao Shen is correct. If the knight wished us dead, he would have killed us earlier. However, Chai Lin, you are right to be suspicious. This entire meeting reeked of desperation, and desperation leads to mistakes. And I had no idea how correct I was at the time when I made that remark. The night warden took us up to a top balcony room with a great fire pit lit in the middle with an eerie orange glow basking around the entire area. As the flames licked and lapped at the air, I felt no warmth, only cold, frightening cautiousness. Separated and sitting far from each other were the three factions I was expecting to see. The knights, who I later came to know as the Noble Legion, were seated near the far wall. They consisted of the Night Warden, a peacekeeper, and a centurion, who had a broad smile on his face, perhaps the only one besides Bao Shen to be doing so. The Vikings were opposite them, near a pillar overlooking the field beyond. One I recognized as a Jarl named Reynold. The other was a raider, and beside that raider was a Valkyrie. She looked antsy and fidgety, as if she was quite uncomfortable. The raider just glared everywhere. He glared at everyone. A figure of brutish rage and power. A legendary warrior, if I'd ever seen one. The samurai were the last I saw, hidden by the shadow of the farthest pillar. A daimyo stood amongst them, in full armor, and her sword at her side. An orochi stood next to her with a dark look in his eye, and the other was a nobushi, and I noted she couldn't take her eyes off the Night Warden. I suspected a prior relationship. Actually, yes, although William wasn't aware of their past encounter at the time. This will come up later, so I'll simply leave the general's comments as they are for now. We have late arrivals, the Night Warden explained. The Jarl huffed in frustration, but said nothing. The daimyo just stared and then glared at William.
You are going to explain why we're here?
She demanded. The Night Warden waited for my colleagues and I to find a place to stand, and then walked towards the center of the room. He glanced at the centurion and gave a curt nod. The centurion stepped forward, lifting a large bag from the ground that, until now, had been hidden from view by his cape. He then undid the fastenings and poured out the contents. Every man and woman in the room, including myself, looked on in horror at the monstrous head that rolled onto the floor. Large and horrific, it had green skin everywhere but the bloody stump where its neck once was. Its yellow, beady eyes glared at me, as if challenging me to fight it. I suppose that was its last thought, at any rate. Its hair tied in a single tail, and its pointed ears were jutting out from the sides of its head. Large tusks were apparent from the underbite it had, and even though dead, there was a vicious rage on its face that made me half sure it was about to start roaring at us again, challenging us all to battle. This is why you're here, William explained. These monsters are the cause of our suffering, these last few weeks. They've struck in key locations in all of our territories, which means they are far-reaching and that they're enveloping the continent faster than we can keep up with them. At first, I thought they were just a nuisance, but after hearing all of your stories and all of your information, I think we can safely assume they're an invasion fleet. What are they? I asked, cutting into his speech. I'm not sure. Certainly some form of monster, but all I do know is they're tough and very difficult to kill. He speaks true, the Jarl nodded. A few of my warriors who survived their own encounters with the brute said they lobbed off heads and legs, but the beast kept coming. Never seen anything like them.
Whatever they are, they're a force to be reckoned with. Incredibly strong, durable, and vicious. Our citizens don't stand a chance against these things,
the centurion agreed, the small smile back on his face, as though this were all a wonderful little dinner we were sharing, rather than discussing fearful information.
Where did they originate?
The daimyo asked.
Well, we've spotted war parties of these green monsters in every province, in every territory. There's no way of knowing where they came from at first, but their infestation grows everywhere.
It's odd that I'm only now hearing of them, I confessed, and to this the raider snorted and rounded on me quickly. Yeah, nice of you to set aside your warring with our people to come and sit in on this. Tell me, how many of my brothers have you butchered, you foreign dog? Silence, Gunnar, the Jarl snapped, grabbing the raider's arm. I didn't rise to his bait. I couldn't have cared less what this raider said. A hypocrite like him had no power over my conscience. 2. The Blue Dragon Corps had been in Valkenheim before the meeting, where they had partaken in a battle with a Viking clan called the Sons of Fire. While not directly from Hrafnfell, this clan had fought alongside Hrafnfell in the past, so it's reasonable to assume that Gunnar might have known one or two of the warriors in that clan. In either case, none are alive now to confirm it. I must give one thing to Chenglong. He's quite thorough when executing his opponents. The real issue, the daimyo spoke up, trying to bring the meeting back to some degree of order, is that if they're all around, how do we deal with them? What is their ultimate goal? A few that we've sighted, William answered, have been sighted moving towards the volcano. Why, though? The Orochi answered, finally daring to growl. What do they want there? Who can say? William answered, but the path of destruction they've created on their way is nothing to ignore. Agreed, the daimyo nodded somberly. Which is why I propose a temporary alliance of sorts. Every eye in the room fell on William in this moment. He spoke nervously, but with conviction. I think there's no secret that we have bad blood boiling between us all. But this threat is one directed at all of us in kind. We have nothing to gain from handling it ourselves, when we could pool our resources. Is this a joke? Gunnar barked. The Jarl made a move to silence him, but this time Gunnar was not quite so easily quieted. You expect me to just bend the knee to some prissy little Ashfeld rat because a couple of green beasts suddenly cropped up around your homes? Gunnar, he spared my life, the Valkyrie spoke up. He helped us, and is offering to help us again now. And that makes up for our people he and his kind have slaughtered before, Gunnar barked. As much as I hate to agree with savages, the Orochi hissed, standing up, I find the idea of any kind of alliance, temporary or otherwise, laughable. The night might mean well, sure, but I have no intention of showing my back to a hairy brute like you. He indicated Reynald. The tension grew ever more bitter. The Orochi reached for his sword, and Gunnar was moving dangerously toward the battle. I did not move, merely content to watch events play out. But then, something unexpected happened. With a loud clatter, the long sword of Night Warden William flew across the floor and crashed between the two. Both the Orochi and the raider stared from the sword back at William, who was removing his helmet for us all to see his face. I'm the one who invited you here. I'm the one who proposed an alliance. If it's so foolish, then by all means kill me. Take out your frustrations on me. Get some well-deserved revenge on me, but know you do so without resistance. I'm not going to draw my sword against you when there are monsters bearing arms against my people. You're not my enemy. Not now, anyway. The two glared at him in frustration, but it was only the Orochi who put away his sword and returned to where he was standing. The Nobushi sneered at him angrily, and then turned her gaze upon the warden's face with an expression I can only describe as lust, which again I suspect was based on a past encounter. Only Gunnar remained where he stood. Well, look at you, the bloody definition of righteousness. You pompous, egotistical, self-righteous little shit! You're not even worth killing. I don't even know why I'm staying here. He then rounded on Reynald and poked a finger in his chest threateningly. And the fact that you, of all people, would stand here and listen to this is outrageous. Where's your pride? He didn't answer, simply glared Gunnar down. When Gunnar saw that no one was standing beside him or supporting his stance, he spat on the ground and stormed away. I'll deal with this myself. I don't need this. No one breathed a word as he marched off. Until we could hear Gunnar finally exit the hall, we dared not speak or move. When the large cast-iron doors finally slammed behind him, Jarl Reynald sighed to speak. Excuse him. He's far more hot-tempered than he should be.
It's what I would expect from your people, if I'm being honest,
the peacekeeper hissed darkly. Reynald shot her a dirty look, and the Night Wardens glared at her a moment before coughing.
None of us like this arrangement, I can see that. But I still think...
Stop wasting your words here, boy. I finally sighed, standing up at last and setting down my weapon to show I was harmless. I approached and looked to the Jarl and Daimyo, both surprised that I had spoken. I think everyone here is in agreement with what you say, but mere words simply aren't enough for us. Words of encouragement mean nothing when words of ridicule and bigotry ring just as loudly.
He's right, the Daimyo agreed. Actions mean more to me than speeches.
You are proposing an alliance to fight these demons. Before we agree to such a proposal, why not demonstrate how far you're willing to go? What assurance can you provide that we will be compensated, or at least treated like your equals and not just fodder for your front lines? William stared at me, and then at Reynald and the Daimyo. He looked conflicted for a brief moment, but then he did something I never expected a knight to ever do before an enemy. He dropped to his knees.
Lord William,
the peacekeeper cried in horror. I offer you everything I have. My land, my wealth, my life, my honor. He spoke with a sincerity that I was sure was not fake. He left me with chills. I've seen what these monsters can do, and I know I'm not enough. Please, get off the floor, boy, Reynald barked. Where's your pride? What good is my pride if it can't protect my people? William challenged. Did you not lay down your own pride and your daughter when you sent her to me? Did the Daimyo Ayu not lay down your own self-respect by agreeing to meet with me in the first place? The only one here who's held on to their honor was Gunnar, and he stormed out of here to go fight the Greenskin menace on his own. To die with your honor is noble, but to live for your people, well, that's nobler still. Even if it does cost me my honor, I must save Ashfeld. And I will save her. And I'll save my people. The Nobushi suddenly made a move towards him, but was stopped by the Orochi, who threw up his hand to block her path. They exchanged words rapidly in their own tongue that I could not follow, and whatever it was about, it was quite heated. The Daimyo did not seem bothered by it as she sighed and shook her head.
I believe you are a man of integrity, she sighed. But you're asking us to stand with an enemy we've known for centuries to fight one we've only known for a month. Can it be so simple?
Of course it can't, Reynald growled. But then again, I suppose nothing truly worth doing is, am I right? I chuckled at the statement. I suppose not. William rose to his feet and looked to us all with a hopeful expression. So, does that mean you'll help me? Before we go agreeing to this alliance, Reynald interrupted, I think there are some questions we need answered, like, what the hell are we up against here? What kind of beasts are we fighting?
I believe I can answer that for you.
I spun around at the sound. I had not heard him enter. I hadn't even been aware of his presence. Every warrior grabbed for their weapon as the strange man entered. He was tall and young, but with a very hard face, like one used to seeing bloodshed. He wore no armor that I could see, but he was adorned in the strangest longcoat I'd ever seen. Pure black with dark boots that clicked on the floor with each step. He smiled politely at all of us and then coughed, hands behind his back in a polite gesture. Pardon the intrusion. My name is Joseph Corvan. I'm what you would call familiar with these green-skinned creatures. I can tell you exactly what you need to know, if you'll permit me. You may call me either Joseph or Inquisitor.